Hello, welcome back to the PPC Gals podcast. So today we're going to dive into a topic that is really shaking up the industry, popular this time of the year, and it is how Google Ads is evolving in 2025. So you really want to listen to this if you are running Google Ads or paying anyone to run your Google Ads. And Ameet and I have had so much experience. What did we calculate? Like 30 plus years among the two of us, something like that. Millions of dollars spent. And so here we go.
Yeah, that's right, Sarah. Between AI advancements and the slow farewell to keywords, which we will get right into, we're kind of stepping into a whole new world, which is kind of funny because I'm thinking Aladdin right now, and I think it fits perfectly that I'm Indian and saying that
A whole new
I'm my own version of Jasmine. It's a whole new world, but it's a whole new world of paid search, and it's a little terrifying, but also really exciting all at the same time.
Totally agree. All right, so let's start with a really hot topic, and that is the rise of AI and machine learning in Google Ads. You know, anytime I say anything about AI, I feel like those blog posts get the most traction. So what is your perspective, Ameet?
Yeah, AI really it's becoming quite the backbone for Google Ads, but just like everything in general too. Like we see it in Meta, we're seeing it in LinkedIn now too. We're going to start seeing it in other platforms if they haven't already started doing it. And it's not just, I think when everybody looks at AI, they're thinking about it in regards to like it handling everything from like variations to bidding strategies, but it's really not just about automation, or at least I don't think so. I think it's really truly about like scaling optimization, and then also or scaling optimizations to where like we possibly couldn't get it to, just like granularity of like being able to, I mean, obviously track a pattern from eons ago, but also just having that, my favorite word right now is human oversight, is really just making sure that we're actually overseeing everything that we're seeing AI do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Absolutely. And I know there are challenges. I know when you've spoken at conferences in the past, you've covered a lot of those, and it feels like advertisers were being forced to give up a lot of control. In fact, you ran that really cool test that I'll always remember in between your employees and AI. But we know that AI, the algorithms tend to optimize for what they think is best, but it doesn't always align with your clients' goals and the brand's unique goals.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. We have seen cases where AI has prioritized like cheaper type of conversion, so like an email sign up or I guess a subscription to a newsletter or something like that. It's still valuable, but not something that's going to directly affect the bottom line of that customer, like booking a demo or calling them for that.
Right.
That pipe repair or whatever the heck it might be. So yeah, again, that human oversight is very critical, because in Google's eyes or in the AI's eyes, it's doing its job when we know that it in fact isn't quite there yet.
That makes sense. So I kind of sum that up and say, AI is great at figuring out the how, right? It'll do like the step by step for you, but marketers have to define the why and put that why and inject their human context and perspective into it. So speaking of redefining, let's get into elephant in the room. And I know we've talked about this in previous episodes, which we will link to in the show notes. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the freaking keywords.
The freaking demise of the keyword. And honestly, I feel like we've been talking a lot about it more and more this year, and it just feels like the end of an era. Like I genuinely just remember when exact match was still exact match. Like what a wonderful match type. And now Google's been nudging us to be more intent focused and play into the audience signals more, especially in 2024 and then going into 2025, obviously. So tools like PMax really kind of are making, they're really making keywords basically obsolete at this point, and that's a little heartbreaking, I'm not gonna lie.
No, I definitely agree. I think you and I both remember when keywords were just, the heart and soul of PPC. It was exactly like, here's keywords, you bid on them, we determine those keywords for you that align to your business, and it works. We would go in and research keywords, bid on them, and then just continuously optimize them. But Google wants us to focus on those audiences and their behaviors. Now, I do have a really quick story. I don't want to go like too long, so I'm going to tell a quick one just because it recently happened today. So I don't know if anyone who's listening to this YouTube or you have ever had an account where you open it up and it is the absolute perfect keywords for the client, but for some reason you don't see the conversions. A lot of people's natural instinct there is to then, either question the brand or go do CRO. But what I actually did is I went into the audiences tab and layered in audience exclusions. So you can take things out. And so what I did is I took out demographic information that I knew that didn't match. And then because we're getting a lot of job seekers, you can actually go into those audiences and you can actually search in the search bar under audience careers, and you can take out people that want careers in that specific vertical. So like construction career seekers, you can take those out. So just an
Or even
FYI.
looking at graduates or something
So
like
yeah,
that too.
yeah, pretty much. And you can target, yeah, and observe. So how do you feel about this whole audience shift?
It's a little bittersweet, honestly. On one hand, like audience signals lets us target people based on their interests, past behaviors, and even like predictive analytics, which obviously we can't. Cool. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do. But then losing the precision, I can't say it, precision keyword targeting. That one's a little bit harder. I
Yeah.
think it's like part of me is sad for sentimental reasons, which is why I've kept like the AdWords girl name for so long. It's just sentimentally, I just
Yeah.
don't want to say goodbye. And that's kind of where I feel like we're sitting at again now with keywords, where it's just like almost like we might have to say goodbye pretty soon. So yeah, it's a little tough.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I've had to tell clients that I say that sometimes it's like the price to pay, right? Like that's the tax you have to pay to be in Google. But I know it makes clients feel uneasy to allow Google to decide which search terms to go after, because especially because you still have that functionality of building out campaigns with keywords. It does feel like handing over the keys to a black box. You put in your inputs, your goals, your supposed keywords, but you actually really don't understand what's happening when you're not getting exactly what you want, or you have that waste in there.
Yeah, that's totally true. And it's not just about transparency, and that's something that I've been talking a lot about. It's also about the accountability piece and all of it. So, like,
Yeah.
if a campaign doesn't perform, who's truly to blame? Is it like the marketer, the agency, or is it the algorithm?
Yeah, no, I think that those are super, super important questions. So speaking of that, I know one of the things, because you and I do talk a lot on accountability about this. I mean, your agency specifically has a role that like functions as like you have a person who is the client and they talk to you like the client. So then your agency is good at handling that. But while you're one of the agencies doing it the right way, what about this whole DOJ lawsuit? Because like you can be the best agency and being super duper accountable to your clients, but you're also operating with a tool that may be potentially accusationally with the DOJ involved could not be. So like something like that, if Google were to break up based on them not being as transparent as we all want them to be, could shake up the entire landscape. So what do you think?
Yeah, the DOJ case is just an interesting one. We've seen the antitrust trials, and really at this point, like we're looking at the effects that it'll have on the industry. It's very clear that it's a couple years out, but you never really know. And my concern with a lot of it is that like with like platforms like they have with Gmail and stuff like that, there's obviously audience signals that are going back.
Yeah.
I mean, we have we had Gmail ads,
Yeah.
it's a different variation of that, but like obviously information is being collected from every single point and then being used backwards into Google ads, or at least that's my belief, even though they've
Yeah.
never actually really
I
quite
agree.
come out and said it.
Yeah.
It's just like this thing that we know, but we just don't know how much is
Right.
being used.
Yeah.
So then I worry about that side of things quite a bit. But then going back to like our keyword discussion, that's where most of my worry kind of comes in. So the DOJ is really pushing for obviously seeing more search term data because Google's been concealing that lately, which is, I mean, annoying in itself. But if they were to open up the data as much as the DOJ wants, then they're flirting with data privacy regulation compliancy issues. So then the only option, and I believe it was Melissa Mackey on LinkedIn who kind of brought this up and really had me thinking about it, but it really, or it might have been Mike Ryan. I don't know who I'm quoting right now, but it was either Melissa Mackey or Mike Ryan. But one of them had said that this is basically like a really good primer for Google to literally just take keywords away from us. And I think that's really where I get really scared with this DOJ case, where any other antitrust trial or anything else that's come out, I've been like, okay, well, like we'll navigate through it. But at this point, if DOJ is actually successful, what happens to keywords? And then it's basically that we just go into search intent and into audience signals more, which is a little scary because that becomes more of a black box for all of us even further. So like the fragmentation, if they are successful, could mean advertisers are managing campaigns across multiple platforms with different rules and different performance standards,
Yeah.
which another thing is terrifying. So it's really going to make us rethink how we approach both strategy and execution moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote like a really, really long article on search engine land, think about every single possibility, and that's one of them. So let's not forget, like you addressed in that, like if there's multiple different platforms, but even like Google itself could be split into smaller entities. And again, my article covered everything at extensive detail. Definitely, maybe that is something we could link in the show notes too, or we could do a whole episode kind of talking about this one topic even. But basically the resources for innovation could end up drying up as a result of Google splitting because they have so much money, and then as a result of what you were saying, like multiple platforms, because like if you're just trying to grow a platform, you don't have a whole lot to innovate. I mean, it could go so many different ways. That said, we also could see the development of more and more Performance Max, right? Like, or we could see Performance Max slow down. Like it could go anyway. What do you see as the real concern with that? I mean, maybe more competition? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the flip side of it is the increased competition could be or could bring more fresh ideas. But like, I feel that especially with the data privacy compliancy stuff that's coming out, it's really kind of pigeonholing everybody that's new.
Yeah.
Because Google's already got that data, Meta already has that data. So it's really kind of putting these new platforms in a little bit of a hole where they are not ever going to be as strong as Google and Meta. So then when I look at it from a competition standpoint, I'm like they're not really going to be able to compete. So then there might not be as many opportunities. But with that said, there's also the flip side of it where that I could be entirely wrong and there could be fresh new ideas, more opportunities for advertisers that would help them adapt. So yeah, it's one of those moments where it's just like I can't give a straight answer on that one. It's just one or the other. I always see every side of I see the angle on everything and I'm like, this is just not great.
No one really can. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. And then, since you and I have spent some time waxing poetic about keywords, what if the shift towards Performance Max just makes it so we can continue to focus on bigger things instead of micromanaging keywords, doing manual bidding, which I have told you I hate with a passion. And we can just invest more of our time in strategy, storytelling. Not only, I always say storytelling, meaning making sure the ads tell the story on the platforms, but I also mean like helping our clients understand nuance, storytelling, and then also like creative, which again, that puts the onus on, a lot of times the client side, but it frees up that time for us to be giving that perspective as well. What are your thoughts there?
I think that's actually a really great point that you've made. It pushes us to think more holistically. So tools like Performance Max aren't obviously just about search anymore. They're a blend of search, display, YouTube, and even local ads.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, like what it really helps with is like understanding cross-channel strategy is even more important. I think AI is helping us there when it comes to the customer journey, but it's also like adding layers of complexity to the equation, because people are kind of jumping in between like longer tail, more precise questions, looking at different, AI there's stuff we can see and that we can't see. I don't know. Part of me is I like being the devil.
That is totally fair. Yeah, just because automation isn't advancing doesn't really mean that we can't take our hands off the wheel. So I think a lot of people, especially when I say human oversight a lot, I think a lot of people are just like, well, we need to be like doing it with AI.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to watch what it's doing and document what it's doing. So that way we have answers for our clients at the end of the day. So if we go, okay, well, it made like this, I don't know, it created a new asset or something like that. At least we know that it did that. And then we can at least look at it from, okay, well, this asset was made on, let's say, November 21. And now we're seeing the effects of it afterwards. At least we know what happened and we know whether the campaign went up and down. So I don't think I just wanted to clarify what I meant by that because I don't want everybody thinking that when I say human oversight, it's like literally doing the work with them. It's letting it do the work and then us just like watching it. We do still need to refine the inputs. So like with creative assets, audience signals, and then data feeds that make the most out of that information that we're giving it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So speaking of all this, like we've talked about data, but when we get to breaking things down at these asset levels, we really get into like this whole privacy situation, right? So like when you pull back on data and you start to make data smaller and in smaller sets because you're breaking it up, privacy is definitely going to be a concern. And so then to layer that on, we have all these tighter regulations coming into play. You have talked so much about, I feel like you even have written articles, also lots of articles on third-party cookies repeatedly. Do you think AI is going to like come in and take over and handle these changes? Can I just stop thinking about cookies and like AI can just, I don't know, figure the human out and cookie it and make it private?
Oh gosh.
You like that? That was really simple.
I just don't like the sound of it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm a control freak. Like, I genuinely miss the days of ads in the 2010s. Like, I'm such a control freak, but it could, I guess, is the answer. Google is really, 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 really leaning hard into first-party data and tools that enhance conversions, but they're also using AI to bridge the gaps with predictive modeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, it depends. It's a tricky question to answer.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think, what we're kind of saying there is that all of this could work in theory, but predictive models, they can go way off track if the training data isn't accurate. And, if things are blocked and we can't see into as much as we can due to privacy, it becomes sort of like this circular argument where we don't have the data to get the predictive modeling to work and we're making the wrong decisions based on too little data. And it becomes sort of stuck at that point.
And that's where the advertisers come in. So like going back to your training data point, like Carnegie Mellon, I think it was in 2016, did an independent study where they actually discovered that ads for jobs or just postings for jobs with higher pay were being shown to men more often than they were shown to women. And that's because the training material that was given to the AI and that machine was skewed. Right. So the one thing that we've learned in that study that we did at Human versus AI was that if the training data is skewed, it will very likely manifest in unfair and discriminatory ads. So we really need to make sure that we as the advertisers are still at play here. So we need to feed the algorithm the cleanest and most accurate amount of data that we possibly have at our disposal. My favorite saying this year is garbage in, garbage out for literally my personal and professional life. And that still stands true here.
So on the topic of all this data, one of the things you had talked about earlier before you jumped on our YouTube today was like that we're now seeing tighter restrictions around customer match. And we just went on this big thing saying, with cookies and Google leaning on first party data and customer match is actually one of our tools. So what do you have to share about that?
Yeah. So on January 13th of 2025, Google will now be reviewing customer match lists a bit more, what's the word? Like aggressively, I guess is the word for it. I can't really think of it. But basically what they're going to be looking at in terms of consideration is user feedback, the severity of the violation, and how frequently the policy has been violated. They will be giving us 7 days warning before suspending the account. But the bad news here is that they will review your customer match lists at any time, basically, whenever they feel like it, just to check for compliance. So we might even start seeing notifications in our accounts saying that we have to re-upload our customer match lists or verify certain things, which is it's going to be incredibly irritating. So the thing that we need to do to avoid these issues, or hopefully avoid these issues, is one, making sure that our first party data that we are collecting was actually collected by us, making sure that we don't target minors and sensitive categories, avoid ultra specific targeting with that ultra specific targeting that could potentially like identify our user. So like super personalized ads, and then also making sure that our privacy policies mention data sharing.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be something that's just like right across the board on our websites now, just to like kind of as like a fallback in a sense. Like I think it should just be standard, even if we're not doing it, at least it's like in our privacy policy that whenever we do it, then at least it's there. Like I just like being proactive. So it's like a really good note for me to quickly go ahead and do that for us as well. But I think this is going to affect small business owners disproportionately just because they're already struggling to meet the requirements as is. So we'll see how that continues to play out. But yeah, they're going to be a little bit more restrictive with the customer match lists now too.
Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunately, that makes sense. So Google's policies, I'm going to kind of sum up what you said. They're getting essentially stricter. You also kind of highlighted it's a reminder that we as marketers need to ensure our collection practices are robust and on point. And then I also kind of took away like, just do the right freaking thing, right? Like, some of what you said, I'm like, should we have been doing that to begin with? I can't believe people are doing that. You probably shouldn't be collecting healthcare sensitive stuff, but just
It's always the few that ruin it for the many. And
It's-
I like to try to remind myself of that.
it is.
And that kind of helps with my anger.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, making sure that we're compliant is really what it's about.
And that is just another reason why we need to ensure that we have clean, actionable first party data. And why it's becoming the gold standard now.
Yeah.
Without it, we're kind of at the mercy of these predictive algorithms, and that's just not a place that we want to be sitting at.
True.
So I know it's hard and it's not ideal, but like really if you're in-house, really like encouraging your team to collect that data, and then obviously for agency, really encouraging our clients to do that. But really, like, I think the education gap is a little too far. So really closing that and then encouraging them is going to be the way forward.
That was really well said. So if you had advice and your client is like watching this YouTube channel right now, what's your advice for Google Ads in 2025?
I think the first thing is stay adaptable. I think a lot of businesses have this tendency to be like, well, it worked for us 2 years ago. It's going to work for us
Right.
again.
Yeah, no.
It's not the case. 2023 Google Ads is not 2024 Google Ads. It's not going to be 2025 Google Ads. Could we have said that in 2010? Probably. Nothing really changed that much during that time period, but now we have so many things that are going on at all times that we really need to make sure that we're staying on top of it and we're willing to adapt. So lean into Google's AI tools. Obviously, don't blindly trust them. Test, analyze, which is obviously the marketer's like core commandments at this point, and then also challenge what the system is saying when it's necessary, and try to figure out what it's doing as much as you possibly can.
So that's really good advice. So the only thing that I'll add, but I feel like in some ways it's saying what you said, is really just like embracing change. Don't forget the fundamentals, like something like layering on audiences. I brought that up earlier in the video. Like that's a fundamental, like layer on an audience with your keywords, add that extra sort of safety net there. And then always remember that the tools are going to evolve around you, but it's still about connecting with your audience, connecting with people and those relationships that you're building. So look at that, at your marketing as doing that.
You're so smart, Sarah. I couldn't agree more. But that's it for us today. Thank you so much for tuning into PPC Gals. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please make sure you don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, leave us a review, all the great things. Share on social too.
Yes.
I would love to get a tag.
Yes. Yeah, and we will see you next time as we dive into 2025. Can't wait to talk more about paid search here.
Bye.
Bye.